A silver USB drive tumbles through dark water, vanishing into the Boise River with a whisper. In her office, watching the morning news, Arthur Vance holds a Polaroid, a photograph taken through his window 5 minutes ago. His hands shake. He has no idea who is still watching. 13 hours earlier, the archive room hummed with fluorescent indifference. Emily's left hand, skin pale under the harsh white lights, pulled the thick manila folder labeled Miller v. City, Discovery from the rusted metal filing cabinet. Dust motes swirled in the sterile beam, dancing their ancient, meaningless dance. The screech of metal on metal filled the archive, a sound like something breaking. The hum of the bulbs pressed down from above, constant, suffocating. She dropped the folder onto the scarred oak desk. The impact sent papers scattering. And then, something else. A small metallic sound, sharp and wrong. A silver USB drive, unmarked and featureless, skidded across the wood grain like a tiny bullet. It stopped at the edge. Emily picked it up with her thumb and forefinger. Cold. Brushed aluminum with no serial number, no branding, no explanation. Just a small cylinder of unknown purpose. She rotated it in the harsh light, watching her reflection bend across its surface. Rain drummed against the window glass outside, a rhythm that had started hours ago and showed no sign of stopping. She walked to her Dell laptop in the corner of the archive, the one she used for after-hours file reviews. The machine took a moment to wake. The drive slid into the USB port with a soft click. A window opened on her screen. Generic drive, E, containing one file, just one. Room 404 MUV-NC. Emily's finger hovered over the trackpad. She opened it. The video was grainy, shot from a fixed camera angle, security footage maybe. The timestamp in the bottom corner read, Mar 12/21/1402. The image showed Arthur Vance's office. She recognized the mahogany desk, the leather chairs, the framed prints on the walls. Vance stood behind his desk, leaning forward. A man in a police uniform stood across from him. The badge caught the light. Vance's mouth moved. Emily leaned closer, her breath fogging the screen. Make the Miller evidence vanish. His hand slid a thick, white envelope across the desk. The policeman's hand closed over it. Neither man looked at the camera. Neither man knew. Emily's hands had gone numb. She sat there, the video looping, Vance's words repeating like a curse. Make the Miller evidence vanish. The rain outside intensified, as if the sky itself was reacting to what she'd just seen. She thought about standing up. She thought about closing the laptop. She thought about walking out of the archive, going home, forgetting any of this had happened. Instead, she pushed the file to a USB backup. A small precaution. Something in her chest told her she would need it. The clock on the wall read 11:42 p.m. She was pulling the drive from her laptop when her phone buzzed. A text from the building's night shift supervisor. Archive inspection tomorrow morning. Make sure everything is in order. Emily packed her bag. She took the silver drive and placed it in her pocket. Then she headed for the rear stairwell. The concrete stairs were empty at this hour. Her sneakers squeaked against each step as she descended, the sound echoing in the hollow shaft. Her hand gripped her leather messenger bag, pulling it tight against her ribs. The stairwell was lit by emergency lighting, that sickly yellow glow that made everything look like a crime scene. She was 3 floors down when the fire door at the bottom slammed open. A hand in a black glove slammed against the railing. Marcus. The building's security guard, thick-necked, cold-eyed, the type of man who never asked questions. His fingers clawed at her bag strap, the fabric tearing under his grip. "Give it to me," he said. No preamble. No explanation. "No," Emily swung her heavy laptop bag with all her strength. The corner of the bag caught him in the temple. His head snapped to the side, sweat flying from his brow in a spray. He staggered back, his vision tilting. Emily ducked under his reaching arm, her shoulder shoving past his hip. She kicked the fire door open with the sole of her boot, the metal booming as it hit the stopper. Rain rushed in, splashing across the threshold, and then she was running through it, into the Boise night, into the downpour that had been waiting for her all evening. She made it to her car and drove. Her apartment was a small one-bedroom in the older part of town, the kind of place that still had working radiators and hardwood floors that creaked in patterns. Emily had lived there for 3 years. It was supposed to feel safe. It didn't. She fumbled her keys at the deadbolt, her hands still shaking from the stairwell encounter. The key went in. The lock turned. She collapsed against the inside of the door, her wet hair plastered to her forehead. Water dripped from her coat onto the hardwood floor, pooling like an accusation. The apartment was dimly lit by a single floor lamp near the sofa. Sarah Jenkins sat on the couch, holding a glass of amber liquid. She turned her head slowly as Emily entered. Ice clinked in the glass. "You weren't supposed to find that, Emily." Sarah's hand rested on Emily's personal laptop, the one she kept at home. The screen was dark. Emily's throat tightened. "How did you get in? You gave me a key 3 months ago when you went to San Francisco. You said I could use your apartment if I ever needed to." Sarah took a slow sip of her drink. "I needed to." Sarah Jenkins had been Emily's mentor at the firm, a senior associate with 15 years of experience. The woman had taught her how to read depositions, how to cross-examine witnesses, how to find the holes in opposing counsel's arguments. Emily had admired her. "Sarah, that video, I know what's on it." Sarah gestured to the coffee table. A legal document lay beside her. Emily's eyes found her name immediately. An employment termination notice with Emily Thorne's name printed in black, 12 Pete Times New Roman. Predated for tomorrow morning. "Arthur never liked you," Sarah said, her voice remaining perfectly flat. "I was just helping him find a reason." The wind whistled through the window screen. Emily's knees felt weak. "The drive is gone, by the way," Sarah continued. "You don't have it anymore. You know that, right? The backup you made on your laptop, I deleted it. The original on the desk in the archive, one of the security team has it. There is nothing left for you to show anyone." Emily backed toward the kitchen. Her mind was already working through possibilities, exits, angles. There were none. Sarah had covered every move she might make. The apartment door crashed open. A tall man in a leather jacket lunged through the doorway. His hand closed around Emily's throat, pinning her against the kitchen counter. Silverware rattled in the sink behind her, the sound of a life being interrupted. Her feet dangled inches off the ground. Emily's right hand scrapped across the counter, searching. Her fingers closed on a glass pepper grinder. She brought it up with all her remaining strength and smashed it into the side of the man's head. Black pepper exploded in a blinding cloud. Glass shards scattered like confetti. The man's grip loosened, his eyes streaming, his lungs burning. Emily gasped and tore free. She didn't look back at Sarah. She didn't look at the man on the floor. She ripped the USB drive from her laptop and dived through the open kitchen window. Her hands gripped the iron slats of the fire escape outside, the cold metal biting into her palms. Rain splashed against her face as she descended into the Boise night, leaving the apartment behind like a body she was abandoning. The internet cafe called The Digital Den was on Morrison Street, the kind of place that catered to night shift workers, insomniacs, and people who had nowhere else to go. Emily paid cash for an hour of computer time and settled into a dark corner booth. A CRT monitor hummed in front of her, ancient and reliable. Her face was illuminated by the blue glow of the screen as her fingers flew across the keyboard. Lines of code scrolled past. She'd learned to code in high school, abandoned it in college, picked it up again out of necessity. Now she typed like someone remembering a language she'd spoken in a dream. A command prompt scrolled. Metadata recovery, 98%. The coffee was cold and bitter. Emily drank it anyway. When the recovery completed, a file property window opened on the screen. Emily's breath caught. The creator field didn't say Vance. It said Ethorn Vance Station. The creation time matched a night she'd been alone in the office, filing briefs in the evidence room. The timestamp was almost exactly 1 week ago. They used my login, she whispered. They planted the camera from my terminal. It was a frame so perfect, it was almost beautiful. Every digital fingerprint pointed to Emily. Every timestamp matched her schedule. They hadn't just stolen the evidence. They had made her the thief, made her the spy, made her the person who needed to disappear. She uploaded the metadata to an encrypted cloud server. Small insurance. A thread to pull on later if she survived long enough to pull anything. The parking garage on 8th Street was mostly empty at 2:15 a.m. Emily's car was on the 4th level, a 10-year-old Honda that had never given her any trouble. She walked toward it, her car keys already in her hand. Arthur Vance stood in front of his black Mercedes-Benz, blocking the garage exit ramp. He wore a tan trench coat, soaking wet from the rain. His hair was slicked back, his face severe and composed. In his hand was a small black remote, the kind used for modern car locks. But something about the way he held it suggested it might do more than unlock a vehicle. Emily. He said her name like a teacher addressing a student who disappointed him. The drive. I'd like it back. Emily stopped 20 feet away. The USB drive was in her pocket. She held it up, the small silver cylinder catching the fluorescent overhead lights. You planted all of it, Emily said. The files, the metadata, the video. You wanted people to think I was the one stealing evidence. Yes. Vance didn't deny it. You were going to be the perfect culprit, an ambitious junior associate, desperate to make partner, willing to spy on our clients. The police would have been called within the week. By month's end, you would have been in federal prison. Behind Emily, she heard the screech of tires. Another car's headlights blazed to life, pinning her between two sources of light. She was caught, surrounded, cornered. Vance held the remote higher. Give me the drive, Emily, or it becomes evidence of your espionage. We've already filed a preliminary report with the firm's security. When I call the police right now and show them what you've done, stealing confidential files, selling them to competitors, your life ends. Not in prison, but before it even begins. Emily's hand trembled. She could see the footage playing in her mind, her login credentials used to access systems at odd hours, her face potentially visible in security camera footage somewhere in the building. She'd been the one to discover the USB drive. In any court, that would look like she'd planted it. Like this was all part of some elaborate scheme to frame her employers. Give it to me now, and you disappear quietly. Vance continued. You resign. You leave Boise. You become a ghost. But if you don't, if you try to take this to anyone, then not only do you go to prison, but everyone around you becomes an accomplice. Sarah, the associates who worked with you, the people you've confided in, they all fall too. The headlights behind Emily intensified. She threw the USB drive at Vance's feet. It clattered on the garage concrete and skidded toward him. Vance smiled, that reptilian smile of a man who was always 3 moves ahead. Smart choice, he said, and he reached down to pick it up. He never saw the fire extinguisher coming. The driver lunged from the second car the moment Emily moved. She'd been waiting for it. Waiting for the moment Vance's attention shifted. She ripped the red cylinder from the wall-mounted rack and swung it like a baseball bat. The hollow clang of metal on ribs echoed through the garage. The driver doubled over, the wind knocked out of him. Emily didn't pause. She pulled the pin on the extinguisher and blasted the nozzle in a wide arc. A thick cloud of white chemical powder erupted, swallowing the henchman and Vance's car in a blinding fog. The powder hung in the air like a ghost made physical. She could hear them coughing, choking, their eyes burning. Emily sprinted toward the garage edge where the ramp descended to the next level. A hand grabbed her ankle. She didn't hesitate. She brought her heel down hard, directly onto the bridge of the man's nose. Bone crunched against her boot sole. Blood sprayed against the wet concrete, crimson on gray. The hand released. Emily kept running. A black sedan appeared from the powder cloud, tires screeching as it accelerated toward her. Emily dove sideways, rolling across the concrete. The sedan slammed into a support pillar instead, the impact concussive and final. She didn't look back to see who was inside. She didn't need to. She descended the garage ramp on foot, her breathing ragged, her entire body humming with adrenaline and survival. By the time she reached ground level, she was running through the rain again. She made it to a safe location by 3 a.m. A secondary location, one she didn't think they would find. A warehouse in an industrial part of Boise, mostly abandoned, mostly forgotten. She'd hidden there once before, years ago, when she was learning things she shouldn't have learned. But Vance found her anyway. The warehouse had a basement. The basement had a secure server room. And when Emily opened her eyes after being forced inside, she found herself zip-tied to a server rack. Blue LED lights flickered across her face like a digital interrogation. The servers hummed and whirred around her, processing information that had nothing to do with her situation and everything to do with maintaining the infrastructure of power that had captured her. Standing before her, dressed now in a tailored suit instead of a police uniform, was Chief Miller, the man from the video. The man who'd taken Vance's envelope and promised to make evidence vanish. "You've been a problem, Emily," Miller said conversationally. "A minor one, but problems tend to grow." "You're not going to let me leave," Emily said. It wasn't a question. "No," Miller agreed. "But you should know something before the end. Vance isn't the boss of this operation. He's barely a middle manager. He takes orders like everyone else." Miller showed her a tablet screen. Dozens of surveillance videos. Office buildings throughout Boise. Law firms, government agencies, financial institutions. In each video, the same basic transaction. An envelope, a handshake, a whispered arrangement. "We own the infrastructure," Miller said. "Every building, every office, every security system. Vance was just the janitor, one janitor among many. When he's gone, another one gets the job." Emily understood then what she was looking at. Not a corruption ring. An entire system. A citywide machine designed to control evidence, manipulate justice, bend the legal system until it pointed in the direction they needed it to point. "The USB drive?" she asked. Miller held it up. The original silver drive from the archive. The one that contained the unambiguous video of Vance and the police chief making their arrangement. This is already being destroyed. Physical evidence has a way of disappearing when you control the means of disposal. He walked toward the door. The zip ties held Emily firmly against the server rack. "Someone will be by in a few hours to handle the cleanup," Miller said. "Try not to make too much noise." We have clients on the other side of that wall, and they value their privacy. The heavy steel door slammed shut. The lock engaged with a pneumatic hiss. Emily was alone. She looked down at her empty pocket. The silver drive was really gone. She could feel its absence like a missing tooth. Everything she had tried to preserve, everything she had risked to keep safe. Now it was in Miller's hands, on its way to being erased from existence. Her head leaned back against the server metal. It was cold. Everything in this room was cold. The tears that carved tracks down her dust-covered cheeks felt warm by comparison. They were the only warm thing in this place. A red light on one of the servers blinked at her. Logging active. Data being written. Everything being recorded. Everything being preserved. Except it wasn't being preserved. It was being controlled. Emily closed her eyes. Then she opened them. The server she was tied to wasn't just a storage unit. It was an active terminal, connected to the network, processing requests, executing commands. And sitting on the floor, no more than a foot away from her extended leg, was a loose Ethernet cable that had been unplugged during the zip tie installation. Emily's bare foot reached out. Her toes gripped the cable, cold and flexible in her grasp. She slowly, carefully, dragged it toward the console port of the server rack she was tied to. The cable moved inch by inch across the concrete. A faint click as the connector seated into the port. The server recognized the new input. A command line appeared on the inactive monitor screen across the room. Emily had a metal shard from her broken watch. The crystal had cracked during the garage fight. She used the sharp edge to work against the zip ties binding her wrists. The plastic was thick, industrial grade, designed to hold. But plastic always had weak points. Pressure applied at just the right angle. And then, the zip ties snapped. They fell away from her wrists. Emily lunged for the server keyboard tray, sliding it out from under the rack. Her fingers flew across the keys. The server was still logged in under someone's administrative account. Probably Miller's. Probably intentionally careless, because no one was supposed to ever get free. She navigated to the server's data storage. Row after row of encrypted video files. Each one a transaction, each one a crime. Each one was time-stamped and labeled by location and date. Emily initiated a system-wide copy of everything. The progress bar appeared on the screen. 5%, 12%, 27%. She opened a terminal and began writing a script to handle distribution, multiple channels, multiple redundancies. One upload going to the Boise Tribune, another to the FBI field office, a third to CNN, a fourth to the Washington Post, and a dozen more to news outlets that didn't have local ties, that couldn't be pressured as easily, that had their own reasons to publish anything that damaged local corruption. 50%, 71%, 89%. Emily's fingers never stopped moving. The keyboard clattered under her assault, each keystroke a small act of rebellion. She could hear sirens in the distance, distant and not yet directed at her location. But they would come. The moment this upload started bouncing across the internet, every alert in the system would trigger. She needed to move fast. 90%, 98%, 100%. Broadcast complete. Local copies deleted. Emily hit enter one final time. The screen flashed white, and then it went dark. She grabbed her bag and ran for the emergency exit. The alarm system shrieked to life, a high-pitched wail that filled the warehouse with urgency and danger. Sirens wailed in the distance, no longer distant now. They were coming. They were coming fast. Emily pushed through the emergency exit into the pre-dawn Boise air. The sky was starting to lighten in the east, pinks and oranges bleeding across the horizon. A new day was breaking. She didn't know if she would see it fully rise. She ran. By dawn, Arthur Vance was sitting in his office at Vance and Associates. The sun hadn't fully risen yet, but the early light was coming through the windows, casting long shadows across his desk. His face was pale. His hands were shaking. The morning news was on. Every channel. The same story, spreading like a virus. Vance and Associates corruption exposed. Chief Miller arrested. Multiple law firms implicated in evidence tampering scheme. Video footage was playing, grainy but unmistakable. Vance handing an envelope. Miller taking it. Dozens of other videos, each one more damning than the last. Arthur Vance was finished. His career, his reputation, his freedom, all of it evaporated in the space of a few hours. He reached for something on his desk. A folded note. His hands were trembling so badly he could barely unfold it. Inside was a photograph. A Polaroid. It showed Arthur Vance sitting at his exact desk, watching his exact television, his face showing his exact expression of horror and defeat. The timestamp on the back read, 5:15 a.m. today. Someone had been standing outside his office window watching him. Someone had taken this photograph 5 minutes ago. Someone was still out there. A white van crossed the Boise River Bridge as the sun broke fully above the horizon. Pink and orange light filled the eastern sky, turning the water beneath the bridge into liquid gold. A hand reached out of the van's passenger window and dropped something into the river. A silver USB drive tumbled through the air, caught the morning light for a brief moment, and then vanished into the dark water below. It sank, spinning slowly, disappearing into the depths. A tiny ripple marked its passage. Then it was gone. The van continued across the bridge, tires humming on the wet asphalt. The highway stretched ahead toward open country, toward mountains and wilderness and places where names didn't matter anymore. They thought I was the evidence, Emily Thorne said quietly to no one. Her voice came through a small speaker mounted on the van's headrest, a recording made hours ago in a moment of certainty. I was the witness. The highway unfolded before her, mile after mile of empty road. Behind her, the city of Boise was waking up to its own reckoning. Arrests would come. Trials would follow. The entire network of corruption that had threaded through the city's institutions was being exposed, layer by layer, detail by detail. But Emily Thorne would not be there to see it. She had uploaded everything from the secure server. The metadata, the surveillance footage, the transaction records, the communications between Miller and Vance and dozens of others. It had all gone out into the world, unstoppable and irreversible. Every major news outlet now had copies. The FBI was already mobilizing. State police were moving in on the city. She had burned the bridge behind her. She had become the kind of person who couldn't stay. The kind of person who had seen too much and knew too much and would be safer if she simply ceased to exist in any official capacity. The van's speedometer climbed. 70 miles per hour, 75, 80. The landscape shifted from urban to suburban to rural. Buildings gave way to open space. The sky stretched endlessly above her. Emily didn't look back. She didn't think about Sarah or Vance or Miller or any of the others. She didn't wonder about her apartment or her car or her life as it had been. Those things belonged to someone else now. Someone named Emily Thorne, who had worked at Vance and Associates and lived in a one-bedroom apartment and had a future that was going to happen without her. The van continued north, climbing toward higher elevations, toward the mountains that surrounded Boise. The roads became narrower. The traffic became sparser. Eventually, there were no roads anymore, just dirt tracks and forest and the sound of an engine pushing deeper into wilderness. The sun climbed higher. The day progressed, and somewhere behind her, in the city she'd left burning, the wheels of justice were finally beginning to turn. Emily Thorne didn't hear them. She was already gone.